The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and regret, a place where time clung to the walls like peeling paint. In the golden haze of morning light, Eleanor Grayson stood trembling, her gnarled hands clutching a worn leather journal. She was 87, and today, she would ask her granddaughter something that could unravel everything. Eleanor's kitchen was a shrine to a life well lived, but heavy with secrets. The oak table bore scars from decades of family dinners, and the chipped teacups on the shelf whispered stories of love and loss. She wore a faded blue apron, its edges frayed like her memories, and her silver hair glowed under the sun streaming through the window. Her granddaughter, Lily, 19 and radiant with the reckless hope of youth, sat across from her, scrolling through her phone, oblivious to the weight of the moment. "Lily," Eleanor said, her voice soft but sharp enough to cut through the hum of the refrigerator. "Put that down. I need you to listen." Lily looked up, startled, her brown eyes wide with curiosity. Eleanor slid the journal across the table, its cover embossed with the initials J.G. James Grayson, her late husband, gone 5 years now. "This was your grandfather's. I need you to keep it, and I need you to read it." Lily frowned, brushing her dark curls behind her ear. "Grandma, you've never talked about Grandpa's journals. Why now?" Eleanor's lips tightened. She hadn't planned to do this today, but the weight of silence had grown too heavy, pressing against her chest like a stone. She'd spent decades burying the truth, but time was no longer her ally. "It's not just a journal," Eleanor said, her voice cracking. "It's his heart. And mine. There are things in there, things I've never told anyone. Not even your mother." She paused, her eyes drifting to the window where the sunlight danced on the rose bushes James had planted. "Promise me you'll read it, Lily. Promise me you'll keep it safe." Lily nodded, hesitant, her fingers tracing the journal's worn edges. She didn't understand not yet, but the urgency in her grandmother's voice tethered her to the moment. Eleanor leaned back in her chair, her hands shaking. She had just handed her granddaughter the key to a past she'd spent a lifetime hiding. The journal was heavier than Lily expected, not in weight, but in presence. That night, in her small apartment downtown, she sat cross-legged on her bed, the journal open in her lap. The pages smelled of dust and ink, and James's handwriting was a jagged dance of loops and lines. The first entry was dated 1962, the year he and Eleanor married. Ellie laughed so hard today, she spilled her coffee. "God, I love her. She doesn't know what I did to afford her ring, and I pray she never finds out." Lily's breath caught. What had he done? She flipped through the pages, her heart racing. The entries were a patchwork of love letters to Eleanor, musings on their life, and cryptic references to the deal and the cost. One entry, dated 1975, made her pause. "Ellie thinks I'm working late at the factory, but I'm not. I met him again tonight. He says it's the last time, but I don't trust him. If she ever knew, it'd break her." Lily's phone buzzed, pulling her from the journal. A text from her best friend. "Mia, you okay? You seemed weird at coffee today." Lily ignored it. She couldn't stop reading. The journal was pulling her into a world she didn't recognize, a world where her gentle, pipe-smoking grandfather, who taught her to fish and told her bedtime stories, was someone else entirely. By midnight, she reached an entry that stopped her cold. 1980, "I saw her today. Not Ellie. The other one. She looked at me like she knew everything, and I wanted to confess it all. But I can't. Ellie deserves better than the truth." Lily's hands trembled. The other one. Her grandfather had been unfaithful? The thought made her stomach churn. She slammed the journal shut, her mind spinning. Who was this woman? And why had Eleanor kept this secret for so long? The next morning, Lily drove back to her grandmother's house, the journal tucked in her bag. The kitchen was the same, sunlit, warm, eternal, but Eleanor looked smaller, frilier, as if the act of giving away the journal had drained her. "You read it?" Eleanor said, not a question. Lily nodded, her throat tight. "Grandma, who was she?" "The other woman." The words spilled out, sharp and accusing. Eleanor flinched, her eyes darting to the rose bushes outside. For a moment, Lily thought she wouldn't answer. "It's not what you think," Eleanor said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "There was no affair. But there was someone else. Someone who changed everything." She stood, moving slowly to a drawer in the corner. From it, she pulled a photograph, yellowed and creased. It showed a young woman, maybe 25, with dark hair and a sad smile, holding a baby. "This is Clara," Eleanor said. "She was my sister." Lily's breath hitched. She'd never heard of a sister. Her mother had never mentioned one. "Your sister?" she echoed, confused. Eleanor nodded, her eyes glistening. "Clara died in 1980. She was troubled. James tried to help her, but it cost him. It cost us both." The room felt smaller, the air thicker. Lily clutched the photograph, her mind racing. A sister, a secret, and a journal that held the truth. "What happened to her?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. Eleanor's gaze drifted to the window again, as if she could see Clara standing among the roses. "It's in the journal," Eleanor said. "But you're not ready for the whole story yet. Keep reading, Lily. You'll understand why I've carried this for so long." Lily left the house in a daze, the photograph and journal burning a hole in her back. She didn't know what to feel: anger at the secrets, sorrow for a grandmother who'd carried such pain, or curiosity about a past she'd never known. As she drove through the quiet streets, she passed a woman standing on the corner, her face half hidden by a scarf. Something about her felt familiar, like a shadow from the photograph. Lily slowed the car, her heart pounding, but when she looked again, the woman was gone. Lily couldn't shake the image of the woman on the corner. Her scarf, her posture right, was like seeing Clara's photograph come to life, though that was impossible. She gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, as she drove back to her apartment, the journal and photograph heavy in her bag. That night, she dove back into James's journal, desperate for answers. The entries grew darker, more fragmented. 1980, Clara came to the house again. "She's unraveling, and I don't know how to stop it. Ellie thinks I'm fixing her car, but I'm meeting her dealer. I paid him to leave her alone, but he laughed. Said I'd owe him more next time." Lily's stomach twisted. Her grandfather, a man she'd idolized, was tangled in something dangerous. A dealer? Clara's dealer? She read on, her heart pounding. "I told Ellie I was working overtime to cover the payments. She believes me, but I see the doubt in her eyes. I hate lying to her." The journal painted a picture of a man torn between love and guilt. James had been trying to save Clara, Eleanor's younger sister, who'd fallen into addiction after a broken engagement. He'd paid off her debts, met with dangerous men in dark alleys, all to keep her safe. But it hadn't been enough. An entry from late 1980 was scrawled in shaky handwriting. "Clara's gone. Found her in the park. Overdose. Ellie doesn't know I was there. I can't tell her I failed." Lily's eyes stung with tears. She imagined her grandfather, kneeling in the cold grass, cradling Clara's lifeless body. She imagined Eleanor, unaware, waiting at home in this very kitchen. The weight of their silence pressed against her chest. Why hadn't they told anyone? Why had they buried Clara's existence? The next day, Lily went to the library, determined to find answers the journal couldn't provide. She searched old newspapers, her fingers trembling as she typed Clara Grayson into the database. A single article appeared, dated November 1980. "Local woman found dead in City Park." The grainy photo showed a young woman with dark hair, unmistakably the same as the photograph Eleanor had given her. The article was brief, clinical, suspected overdose, no family mentioned. Lily felt a pang of anger. Clara had been erased, reduced to a footnote. As she left the library, she noticed a man watching her from across the street. He was older, maybe 60, with a weathered face and a gray coat. His eyes locked on hers for a moment before he turned and vanished into the crowd. Lily's heart raced. Was she imagining things, or was someone following her? The journal, Clara, the woman on the corner, it was all too much. She clutched her bag tighter, the photograph inside like a talisman. Back at her apartment, Lily called her mother, Sarah, desperate for clarity. "Mom, did you know Grandma had a sister?" The line went silent. When Sarah finally spoke, her voice was strained. "Where did you hear that?" she asked. Lily explained the journal, the photograph, Eleanor's confession. Sarah sighed, a sound heavy with years of unspoken pain. "I knew about Clara," she admitted. "But Mom and Dad never talked about her. They said it was too painful. I was only a kid when she died. Why didn't you tell me?" Lily demanded, her voice breaking. Sarah hesitated. "I wanted to protect you. Some stories, they're too heavy to carry." Lily hung up, her mind reeling. Her family had built a fortress of silence, and she was only now seeing the cracks. That evening, Lily returned to the journal, her hands shaking as she opened it. An entry from 1981 caught her eye. Ellie's changed since Clara died. She smiles, but it's not the same. I see her looking at the roses, and I know she's thinking of her. I wish I could tell her I tried. I wish I could tell her about the money. The money? Lily's pulse quickened. She flipped forward, finding a cryptic note. The safe in the attic. If anything happens to me, Ellie needs to know. But not yet. Lily's breath hitched. A safe? She'd never heard of one in her grandmother's house. She grabbed her keys and drove back to Eleanor's, the journal and photograph in tow. The kitchen was dark when she arrived, the roses outside swaying in the evening breeze. Eleanor was asleep in her armchair, a quilt draped over her knees. Lily didn't wake her. Instead, she crept upstairs to the attic, her heart pounding. The attic was a maze of dust and memories-old furniture, boxes of Christmas decorations, and a small, rusted safe tucked in the corner. Lily's fingers trembled as she tried the handle. Locked. She searched the journal for clues, finding a faint note in the margin, Ellie's birthday. She entered the date 04-12-1938, and the safe clicked open. Inside was a stack of letters, yellowed and tied with twine. They were addressed to Eleanor, in James's handwriting. Lily's hands shook as she untied them. The first letter began, "My dearest Ellie, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I need you to know the truth about Clara, about the money, about everything." Lily froze, the attic's silence deafening. She heard a creak on the stairs behind her. Spinning around, she saw Eleanor standing in the doorway, her face pale in the moonlight. "You found it," Eleanor whispered, her voice trembling. "You weren't supposed to find it yet." Lily's heart pounded as she clutched the letters, the attic's dim light casting shadows across Eleanor's face. "Grandma, what is this?" she asked, her voice shaking. Eleanor stepped forward, her hands trembling as she reached for the safe. "I didn't want you to find those yet," Eleanor said, her voice barely audible. "James, he wanted to protect me. But he left me with the truth, and I've carried it alone all these years." She sank onto an old trunk, her eyes distant. "Sit, Lily. Let me tell you what the journal couldn't." Lily sat, the letters heavy in her lap. Eleanor's story came slowly, each word heavy with decades of grief. Clara, her younger sister, had been vibrant but reckless, drawn to dangerous men and darker habits. When she got pregnant in 1979, James stepped in, desperate to save her. He'd paid off her dealer, taken loans from men who didn't forgive debts easily, all to keep Clara and her unborn child safe. But Clara spiraled, and the baby a girl was born addicted, taken by social services. Clara overdosed months later. James blamed himself, Eleanor said, her voice breaking. He thought he could fix it, but he couldn't. And I blamed him too, for a while. I didn't know the whole truth until after he died. She gestured to the letters. He wrote those to explain everything. The money, the lies, the men he dealt with. He was ashamed, Lily. He thought he'd failed us both. Lily's throat tightened. "Why didn't you tell anyone? Why keep it a secret?" Eleanor's eyes glistened. "Because Clara was my sister. I loved her, and I hated her for what she did to us. Telling the world felt like betraying her memory. And James, he carried that guilt to his grave." Lily spent the night in the attic, reading the letters. Each one was a confession, a love letter, a plea for forgiveness. James had borrowed money from a local loan shark, Vincent Marrow, to pay Clara's debts. When he couldn't repay it, Vincent had threatened Eleanor. James had worked double shifts, sold family heirlooms, anything to keep Vincent at bay. The final letter was the hardest to read. "Ellie, if Vincent comes for you, tell him about the safe. There's enough there to settle the debt. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you while I was alive." Lily's mind reeled. Vincent Marrow. The name felt like a ghost, lingering in the shadows of her grandfather's words. She searched his name online, finding an old article about a local businessman arrested in the 1980s for racketeering. He'd been released a decade ago. Was he still alive? Was he the man she'd seen across the street? The next morning, Lily returned to the kitchen, where Eleanor was brewing tea, her movements slow and deliberate. "Grandma, who's Vincent Marrow?" Lily asked, her voice sharp. Eleanor froze, the teapot trembling in her hands. "Where did you hear that name?" she whispered. "The letters," Lily said. "James mentioned him. He said Vincent might come for you." Eleanor's face paled. She set the teapot down and sat, her hands clasped tightly. Vincent was a mistake. James thought he could handle him, but men like that don't forget. After Clara died, Vincent disappeared. I thought it was over. Lily's heart raced. What if it's not? I saw someone yesterday, watching me. What if it's him? Eleanor's eyes widened, fear flickering across her face. No, she said, shaking her head. It can't be. He'd be too old now. But her voice lacked conviction. That afternoon, Lily drove to the address listed in one of James's letters, an old warehouse on the edge of town. She didn't know what she was looking for, but she couldn't sit still. The warehouse was abandoned, its windows shattered, but as she approached, she saw movement inside. Her pulse quickened. She stepped through a broken door, the air thick with dust and mildew. A figure emerged from the shadows, an older man, his face weathered, his gray coat familiar. "You're Eleanor's granddaughter," he said, his voice low and gravelly. Lily froze, her hand on her phone. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Name's Daniel," he said, raising his hands. "I knew your grandfather. I worked for Vincent Merrow." Lily's blood ran cold. "I'm not here to hurt you," Daniel continued. "I've been watching you because I owe James. He saved my life once, and I promised to look out for his family." Lily's mind spun. A twist she hadn't expected, a man tied to her grandfather's past. Not a threat, but a protector. "Why now?" she asked, her voice trembling. Daniel's eyes softened. "Because Vincent's back. He's old, but he's not done, and he knows about the safe." Lily's heart thudded as she stood in the abandoned warehouse, Daniel's words echoing in her mind. Vincent Merrow was back, and the safe, her grandfather's last secret, was the key. She glanced at Daniel, his weathered face etched with a sincerity she wanted to trust but couldn't fully. "Why should I believe you?" Lily asked, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. Daniel sighed, pulling a faded photograph from his coat pocket. It showed him, younger, standing beside James, both smiling outside the warehouse. "Your grandfather was a good man," Daniel said. "He got in over his head with Vincent to save Clara. I was there. I saw it all." Lily took the photograph, her fingers trembling. The image was a bridge to a past she'd only glimpsed through James's journal and letters. "What does Vincent want now?" she asked. Daniel's eyes darkened. "Money. Revenge. He thinks James hid something valuable in that safe. He's been watching your grandmother's house." Lily drove back to Eleanor's, her mind racing. The sun was setting, casting the kitchen in a warm, deceptive glow. Eleanor sat at the table, the journal open before her, her eyes red from crying. "Grandma," Lily said, sitting beside her, "Vincent Merrow is alive. And he's coming for the safe." Eleanor's hands shook as she closed the journal. "I thought it was over," she whispered. "James said he'd settled it. He said we were safe." Lily reached for her hand, feeling the fragility of her grandmother's bones. "We need to open the safe again," Lily said. "Whatever's in there, we need to know." They climbed to the attic together, the air heavy with dust and anticipation. Lily opened the safe, revealing more than just the letter's small velvet pouch and a key. Inside the pouch was a diamond ring, its facets catching the faint light. Eleanor gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "That's my mother's ring," she said, her voice breaking. "James said it was lost." Lily picked up the key, its weight unfamiliar. "What's this for?" she asked. Eleanor shook her head, bewildered. "I don't know. He never mentioned a key." Lily's mind flashed to the warehouse. Was this what Vincent was after? Something James had hidden? Something worth more than money? That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She sat in her apartment, the journal, letters, and key spread before her. She reread James's final letter. "Ellie, the key is for the locker at the old warehouse. If Vincent comes, give him the ring. It's all he ever wanted." Lily's heart sank. The ring was her great-grandmother's, a family heirloom. James had used it to barter with Vincent, but had he ever given it up? She called Daniel, her voice urgent. "There's a key," she said, "for a locker at the warehouse. Do you know about it?" Daniel was silent for a moment. "Meet me there at dawn," he said. "Bring the key. And the ring." At sunrise, Lily stood outside the warehouse, the key and ring heavy in her pocket. Daniel was waiting, his gray coat blending with the morning mist. He led her to a rusted locker in the back, its lock matching the key. Inside was a small metal box containing a stack of cash thousands, maybe more, in a note in James's handwriting. "For Ellie. If I fail, this is for you to start over." Lily's eyes burned with tears, Her grandfather had planned for every possibility, even his own failure. Daniel watched her, his expression unreadable. "Vincent's coming tonight," he said. "He knows you found the safe. He thinks the ring is still there." Lily returned to Eleanor's, the cash and note hidden in her bag. She told her grandmother everything: Daniel, the warehouse, Vincent's return. Eleanor's face hardened, a resolve Lily hadn't seen before. "I won't let him take anything else from us," Eleanor said. She took the ring from Lily, slipping it onto her finger. "This was my mother's. It's mine now, and yours someday." Together, they devised a plan. Lily called Daniel, arranging to meet Vincent at the warehouse. She'd offer the cash, not the ring, hoping it would be enough. As night fell, Lily stood in the warehouse, the box of money at her feet. Vincent arrived, older than she'd imagined, his eyes cold and calculating. "Where's the ring?" he demanded. Lily held up the box. "This is what James left. Take it and leave us alone." Vincent laughed, a harsh, guttural sound. "You think I want his dirty money?" The ring was a promise. He broke it. Before Lily could respond, headlights flashed outside. Daniel stepped from the shadows, a gun in his hand. "It's over, Vincent," he said. "James paid his debt. Let it go." Vincent lunged, but Daniel was faster, pinning him to the ground. Lily's heart raced as she called the police, her hands shaking. When they arrived, Vincent was taken away, his threats fading into the night. Daniel vanished before Lily could thank him, leaving only the photograph of him and James behind. Back in the kitchen, Lily and Eleanor sat together, the ring glinting on Eleanor's finger. The journal lay closed, its secrets finally free. "You're stronger than I ever was," Eleanor said, her voice soft. Lily smiled, tears in her eyes. "I learned it from you."